He didn't cry with sound that night. He cried with his hands. My 6-year-old son looked up at me, fingers shaking, and signed one word I had never bothered to learn: protect. Tell me if your child begged for safety in a language you never learned. What would you do? My name is Robert Hartley, and from the driveway, my life looks perfect. Big iron gates, a fountain that never shuts off, floors that reflect your face back at you like a warning. People call me a millionaire and imagine peace inside these walls, but I'm going to tell you something. I wish someone had told me sooner. A quiet house is not the same as a safe one, and polished silence can hide a lot of dust if you never kneel down to look. My son Ethan was born deaf. He's small, sharp-eyed, carries a blue stuffed whale everywhere, presses the worn button eye into his palm when the world tilts. I thought I did right by him. Private tutors, routines, experts. A checklist so clean it squeaked. What I didn't do was the only thing that mattered. I didn't get down at his eye level, and I didn't learn the language he lives in. That's not on the school or the system or the weather. That's on me. Back then, my new wife Vanessa ran the estate like a stage. Fresh flowers that didn't grow here, lights set to magazine brightness, staff trained to say yes before I finished my sentence. The kitchen had to look like no one cooked. The floors had to reflect the ceiling. And Ethan, no running, no mess, sit through a lesson with a tutor who wrote apple on a card and never looked up to see a child signing apple at his cheek. You hear me, the house worshipped quiet and performance more than people. Then Helen came, our new housekeeper, a mother with steady hands, and with her came Zoe, 8 years old, backpack strap hanging by a prayer eyes that noticed everything. While I paced a marble hallway on a call about urgent deliverables, Zoe found Ethan halfway up the stairs, clutching that whale like a life jacket. She didn't shout from above. She walked over, knelt until her eyes met his, and signed slowly, the way you do when what you say matters. Hi, I'm Zoe. Ethan's shoulders were shaking. Not loud sobbing, just a small tremor, the kind that happens when a little kid is working very hard not to break. His hands fluttered like birds looking for a branch that would hold. He signed one word: help. Pattern interrupt. Read that again. A child asked for help, and the only person who understood was an 8-year-old with a cracked backpack. Vanessa came in on sharp heels, smile thin as a blade. Zoe, stay close, she said, and she patted Ethan's head the way you dust a lamp. He flinched. You know what I mean. That little jerk of the shoulders that says a person has learned to expect the next thing to hurt. I didn't see it then. I was the kind of man who could recite a growth forecast and miss his own son's fear. Helen listened to the rule list. Staff silent unless asked, counters spotless, windows perfect. Ethan must not run, Ethan must not make a mess. And I watched her nod like a woman who knows survival has a price. But she's a mother. She heard the sentence I'd trained myself to ignore. We tried to teach him to behave, but he doesn't listen. You tell a deaf child he doesn't listen, and you can hear the whole problem if your pride isn't too loud. Zoe practiced signs in the pantry, feet swinging, mouthing little jokes she learned at school. Friend. Safe. I understand. How can I help? Later, when Ethan peeked around the doorway, she gave a small corner smile, nothing flashy, and signed again. Are you okay? He looked at the heavy drapes, chin pointing at them like they were a person. Not safe when she shuts the curtains, he signed. She says I'm bad when I cry. Curtains. Sounds small, right? Wait. Picture this. Someone yanks your world dark and tells you it's your fault for wanting light. The tutor arrived, part in his hair so straight it could cut, glass tie, neat lesson plan, neat everything neat, except the one thing he needed: attention. He tapped a book to get Ethan's eyes, wrote apple in big letters, and waited for a nod like a trained seal trick. Ethan stared at the word and thought about shape and taste and how juice runs down your wrist on a hot day. He lifted his hand toward his cheek, the sign for apple, and the man tapped the card again. Vanessa crossed her arms in the doorframe like a judge waiting for a guilty plea. "Focus, Ethan," she said, and even though he couldn't hear, he saw the shape of her mouth. Trouble. If it were you and your child had to choose between hands that respected him and a mouth that didn't, where would you want him to look? Be honest. The lesson dragged like a car stuck in the wrong gear. When it ended, Ethan slid off the chair rail, tucked under one arm, face carefully blank. He passed a mirror and signed to his own reflection. "You are not broken. Hold on. People say kids don't know themselves. Watch a 6-year-old tell himself to hold on and say that again. A crash in the hallway. Not plates, not glass. A softer, worse sound." Zoe ran first, then Helen. I came late again. Ethan was on the floor by the windows, one curtain half torn from the rings, the whale stranded a few feet away. Vanessa stood above him, one hand still on the cord, anger so tight it looked painted. "Look what you've done," she said, and even if he couldn't hear, he read blame on her lips like a headline. Zoe moved between them on instinct, small and fierce. "He wanted to see the rain," she said. "He needs someone to sign to him." Helen stepped in behind her, calm and solid. That's when I finally walked in, man of the house suit still perfect, and saw a picture I couldn't make sense of. Torn curtain. Boy on the floor. Little girl with her hands in the air like beacons. Wife with a smile so controlled it didn't look real. "What happened?" I asked. Vanessa went first, of course. He had another tantrum. I was handling it. Yeah, that happened. Ethan looked past me and stared at Zoe's hands. He trusted the language that had never punished him. Zoe signed big, steady, "You are brave." With me, safe. He reached toward her like she was the only light left. My chest burned. I realized I didn't have words in the language that mattered, and I felt like a stranger in my own living room. Sir Helen said evenly, "Your son is deaf. Zoe can ask him what he needs. We can translate." I nodded like a man agreeing to the obvious, a year too late. Zoe knelt again, eye to eye with my boy, and signed, "Do you want to tell your dad?" Ethan signed yes, but scared. She signed, "I believe you. I'm here. Has someone been unkind?" His hands rose and fell like he was lifting words from a deep lake, night dark, squeezing quiet. And his eyes added, "What hands can't the kind of truth that empties air out of a room so excuses can't breathe?" Vanessa stepped forward. Ethan jerked so hard he lost the whale. Zoe lifted her palm like a stop sign. I reached out and caught Vanessa's wrist. Not rough, just enough to stop the next second. "Don't," I said, and 100 things I should have said months earlier crowded behind that one word. Doorbell. Family services. Detective Harris. Rain on her coat eyes that had seen worse and chose kids anyway. Somebody had made a report. And if you're tempted to roll your eyes at that, remember what a report can save that a reputation never will. She knelt to Ethan's height, looked at his face, spoke slow, and Zoe translated like a lifeline. "He says he's not safe when the curtains close. He says she scares him." Vanessa tried the old song, sensitive child miscommunication discipline. But Harris raised a hand, and the singer lost the stage. They took Vanessa in for questioning. At the door, she turned, smile glued on voice the temperature of a freezer. "Secrets don't stay buried forever." She left a cold behind her that the thermostat couldn't fix. Pattern interrupt. Do you feel the drop in your stomach? That's the moment you realize a house can be quiet for all the wrong reasons. That night, Helen set a plate of cut fruit on the coffee table. Tiny moons of apple coins of banana strawberry hearts, and wrote on a sticky note, your choice. Zoe drew a quick apple next to the word, because pictures are a language too. Ethan touched the drawing signed apple at his cheek, and we all smiled at the same second, for the first time in a long time. Later, Zoe pulled out an old tablet with a cracked corner and typed simple yes, no questions, so Ethan could answer without putting his fear on trial. Do the curtains mean be quiet? Yes. Does Vanessa make you scared? Yes. Did anyone else know? Do you want me to tell your dad now? Yes, but careful. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. Near midnight, I walked down for water and found the back door open a whisper. On the counter lay a folded piece of paper, edges, tired handwriting. I knew like a ghost I'd tried to forget. My late wife. If anything happens to me, it will not be an accident. Trust no one. Protect Ethan. The one you think you know best will betray you. I had seen that letter once in her shaking hands while I said, "Later, honey, I've got a call." Later never came. She died suddenly. That's what I believed. And the letter disappeared. Seeing it now ripped the floorboards up under my perfect house. I shoved it into my pocket and ran upstairs. Ethan was awake, eyes wide. He signed in the dark, danger close. Zoe read it and whispered, he says someone's here. My chest went cold. Morning brought Detective Harris with a folder that looked too heavy for paper. Toxicology. The autopsy didn't add up. Traces of a rare poison. Not a freak heart issue, not stress, not a broken woman. Someone had made sure my wife didn't wake up, and the records were massaged by a man we trusted. Twist time, and it hurt. Early numbers pointed at Helen. Deposits in her account during the months my wife faded. They stopped right after. She cooked then. She had access. Harris laid down the facts like cards. Belief doesn't erase evidence, she said, but it matters. I asked for a minute with Helen. Her hands shook. Those deposits, she said, were from Vanessa. Hush money. She wanted me to keep quiet when your wife got sick. Vanessa was having an affair with the family doctor. I was ashamed, afraid. I never touched your wife, and I never spent that money. I wanted to believe her, and my son didn't want. He signed it like a law. Safe. 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 Zoe said it out loud, tears in her voice. Harris watched the boy clinging to the woman who'd been his calm and nodded once. We'll check the doctor, she said. Hours later, bank records call logs autopsy edits. The picture snapped into focus with a sound like glass breaking. Transfers from Vanessa's private accounts to the doctor. Calls at strange hours. Notes in the hospital chart altered by the very man who wrote them. It wasn't Helen. It was Vanessa and the doctor. Conspiracy to murder, manipulation of records, a grand performance with our grief as a prop. Yeah, that happened. The police moved. Vanessa, already in custody, faced new charges. The doctor was arrested before midnight. And inside my house, something long and shapeless cracked and let light in. Not all at once, not soft. Light can be fierce when it hits a room that's been dark too long. I went to Ethan's room and sat on the carpet the way you do when you're done pretending you're above anything. I lifted my clumsy hands and tried to say the words I'd been saying wrong for years. Sorry, love always. And he didn't mock me for getting it crooked. He took my fingers and moved them gently, patient, the way children are when they decide you're finally worth saving. He signed back, "Learn, stay, please." I stayed. We made small choices that turned out to be big. We kept the curtains open. Literal curtains, not metaphor. We put drawings on the walls where the rule clipboard used to hang. I told the tutor to find another family and hired a teacher who signs before he speaks. We labeled the world Doorlight Apple Hope, not because English mattered more than ASL, but because every label in this house used to say, "Don't," and we needed them to say, "This is." Detective Harris visited a week later, stood in the doorway like a guard angel in sensible shoes, and watched Ethan teach me the sign for hope. It starts at your wrists and lifts up like something that refuses to stay down. I messed it up and he laughed, a sound that wasn't words and didn't need to be. Zoe clapped like we'd just scored in a championship game. Helen wiped her eyes and said, "Silence felt safer." It wasn't. You know what I mean. Now let me be honest. There's no soft fade to credits. We had lawyers and statements and a lot of nights where Ethan woke up signing "bad whale gone hate," and I had to be a father in a language I was learning at the speed of love. We also had this, a home that listens. Not perfect, not quiet in the way it used to be, but listening. And I have questions for you. Where were the adults when a little boy learned to fear curtains? Why did I trust neat reports over a messy, honest child? Why do we pour money into expertise and forget the first job is to kneel? Do you think that's fair? If it were you, would you have believed the bank statements over the boy's hands? Or would you have looked at who he ran toward when the room went dark? Here's the part that might make some of you good. Let it. Deafness isn't silence. It's a language. If we don't teach it in our schools, if tutors can't sign, if parents like me don't learn, we're not doing fine, we're committing neglect with nice furniture. Kids should not need a Zoe to show up so the adults finally decide to listen. But sometimes they do so when a kid like her shows up, give her a medal, not a side eye. So yes, Vanessa will face a courtroom. The doctor will stand under lights he can't dim, and we'll be there. Not for revenge, for truth. For a boy who found his voice in his hands, and a little girl who answered in kind. For a house that will never close its curtains at a child again. We finish our nights now with 3 signs: "Thank you, safe hope," and a whispered prayer I should have said years ago. Some mornings the sun hits the dust in Ethan's room, and it looks like glitter, and he presses his whale to the window like it's saying hello to the light. Zoe drops by after school, learns new signs, teaches me hers. Helen cooks food that smells like home, not like a showroom. And me, I learn, I listen, I kneel. This ending won't be tidy because life isn't. It will be honest. We chose light over performance, language over noise, a child's truth over an adult's pride. You might not agree with every choice I made. Good. Tell me why. Tell me what you would have done the night a 6-year-old signed "Protect" and you realized you didn't speak the language of your own house. Drop your thoughts below. Argue challenge. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me if you think Vanessa deserves the maximum. Or if the doctor's betrayal is the deeper sin, tell me. If your school teaches sign, tell me if you're a Zoe who knelt when everyone else stood. Share this with someone who needs the reminder that quiet isn't the goal. Connection is. And if there's a letter in your life you promised to read later, go get it now. If there's a curtain in your world someone keeps closing to make the truth easier to ignore, go open it even if the light stings at first. No more shadows, no more quiet that hurts. I'm Robert. I'm learning and I'm listening. Your turn. What would you have done?